Are you happy to be here? Woo! Alright, so for those of you that do not know me, my name is Jason Moore, and probably 5-6 years ago, at the beginning of Redemption, I got the pleasure of getting to start out with Brendan and a couple other people. We were a small room in the back, and man, I'm going to tell you that Redemption truly changed my life. But after being a part of Redemption for a while, I moved on to Encounter Ministry. The Lord called me there, and I got to meet Eugene Cantrell, and I've known him for about 4 years now. And I just kind of spoke to him a little bit ago, but I don't know about you guys, but I can tell you that the one thing that the devil really seems to get a hold of me on is busy. Does that make any sense to anybody? I get so busy sometimes with not necessarily bad things, but other things than what the Lord has for me, that I forget to be there where I need to be there. And it's more than I like it, just to be honest with you. Eugene has truly been a mentor to me over the last 4 years, because he is probably the busiest man you ever meet. But he's always there where the Lord calls him to be. And so for that, I really, truly thank you. And his wife as well, because I don't think he could do it all without her. But with that, I'd like to introduce you guys to Eugene and Sheila Cantrell.
I had to try to get some of that fish grease off these glasses so I might be able to see just to read just a little bit. I'm going to try to do the biggest part of this tonight by heart. I give a testimony a little bit and at the encounter, but I live the testimony, so I can pretty well know what the testimony is. But anyway, I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Eugene Cantrell. I've lived here in Marshfield for, in the neighborhood of 45 years. I moved here when I was 14-year-old, and I'm 61 now, but my family's been a resident of Webster County their whole life. Cantrell is kind of a name that you know around here a little bit, and there's good ones and bad ones, and we're the good ones. We really are. We're the good ones, I mean. And I've got some siblings here that live in this part of the country, and one of them is my brother sitting up here, Mike Cantrell, and my brother works down here at the lumber yard, is Kevin Cantrell, and then I've got a sister that works here in town, does some cleaning and stuff, and her name is Sandra Hightower. But anyway, this testimony is a little different than anybody ever heard here, because I'm kind of doing it like a buddy of mine sat back there. I just took notes and cards and stuff like that there, so I don't have to read word for word. I can do a little bit of rabbit hunting every once in a while in my story. But the big deal is that, as this song says, he never fails. You seek him and he will not fail you. But there was a long time in my life that I didn't seek him. So anyway, I'm going to get kind of started on this story. I grew up in Rogersville when I was a young kid, till I was 14-year-old. I went to Rogersville High School. With that being said, we lived on a 200-acre farm. We raised hogs and we raised milk cows, and that's what we done 7 days a week. And I don't know if very many people here don't know about what farmers' lives are, but farmers didn't do a whole lot besides farm. And there was church never brought into our family. Not that my mom and dad was a bad person. They were great people. I loved them to death, and they never did us no harm. But church was just never brought into our life. There was a young, but there was a lady in my life at that time that she was, there's a lady here that is her grandma. Her name was Agnes McVeigh, and she was about the only Jesus we ever seen once a year. She would come, and that was my dad's sister, and she would bring the blessing on Christmas. We always had a big Christmas deal. That was about the only time every year that we would ever hear anything about Jesus, was a blessing just over our Christmas dinner. Not that my mom and dad didn't believe in Jesus, but it just never was spoke of. But anyway, going on, I never seen my dad drink a drop until I was about 16 years old, and he didn't drink. He just one day he decided he wanted to drink a little bit, and I just kind of started looking at that. thinking that was kind of, that's not too bad, you know. You know, my dad don't get too crazy, you know, he's homebody and he just, but anyway, that was kind of what I grew up with, you know, and I just, I think I might have seen my dad kind of get out of hand one time before I graduated high school, and I just, you know, I never was on the other partying side. I was always on kind of I think here in Marshfield they had the Cowboys and the Flutes. I don't know what all their names was, but I mean, I was kind of the poor people. I had to kind of just go to Bell Ford and just kind of go to a creek party. But that was my lifestyle back then. And then, fast forward a little bit, 1984, I got married. And that was about a 10-year relationship. But out of that relationship, I did acquire one son. And his name is Brandon Cantrell, which that marriage between him and his mother lasted 10 years, and 2 years after he was born, we got divorced. And, you know what? I was lost, especially because I didn't really want a divorce to start with, and I just had a child. And I didn't want to be an every other weekend dad, but I didn't really show it because as soon as I went through that divorce, I kind of just started, you know, looking what the world had. I mean, before that, I really just I was too poor to do anything. But once I got a single man, I kind of started doing things I wasn't supposed to. I wasn't really paying attention to my son. I really wasn't showing him what he needed to see in life. But my brother Kevin, one day, he called me and he said, hey, he said, down here at Duncan, Missouri, they're having a little bit of a pool tournament. He said, would you like to go? And I said, well, yeah, I guess I would. And mind, you know, I'd only been divorced about 4 months. And I went down there, and me and my brother, we started playing this pool tournament. And I was doing pretty good until this blonde walked in. And I just knew her from past history. And we started talking, and next thing you know, I told my brother, I said, you go ahead. He'd already got knocked out of the tournament, and I said, you go ahead and play the rest of my tournament, I'm going to go talk to Sheila. So from there, you know, me and her talked a little bit, and she said, you know, I don't know where you're at in life, but she said, if you want to take this a little bit farther, come and see me at Grandma's tomorrow, and I'll bet you she'll have chicken and dumplings. And well, I like the chicken and dumplings, so naturally I went down to the dumplings, so I was going to have chicken and dumplings. But anyway, that's what started me and Sheila's relationship 32 years ago, and we've been married. We just celebrated 31 years of marriage. Woo! I thank the Lord for that, because I guarantee you, when you start hearing the rest of this story unfold, it wasn't nothing to do with me. It was all to do with the Lord. So, you know, we got married. I really didn't waste much time. We got married within 6 months of 7 months within my divorce that I got. And me and her didn't even know nothing. I mean, there was no communication, and I can swear to that. I mean, but we just kind of hit it off, and, you know, that's just the way it was. And we got married in the summer of 85, and I was never a big partier. Like I said, you know, I was really too poor to do much partying. But anyway, I took a hankering to start drinking, and I started putting drinking in my life where that's about all I thought of. And I had an awesome job, I had an awesome wife, had an awesome son, but I thought more of my drinking than I did anything. I let the drinking control me. I let it control what I done in life. I let it control everything I done in life. Matter of fact, one time there was a death in the family out here, and about towards the Duncan, and they asked me to sing at his funeral. And I do a little bit of singing at people's funerals and stuff. And me and a buddy of mine went out there, and I got in about 3 o'clock in the morning at home, and I went ahead and got up the next morning to go to work, and it just so happens where I worked at that next morning, we was having a drug test, what it was. Well, I got pulled that morning, just so happened, for a drug test, and I went in to do my drug test, and I done what they told me to do, and but I didn't have to blow in the monitor that day, and just so happened, my boss come out there about 10 minutes later. He said, "Hey, you need to come back in the office with me." He said, this guy that gave you that test a while ago said he thought he smelled alcohol in your breath. I said, "Do what?" And he did. I mean, it was an all-night deal where, and I brought him back to work with me, and I was very lucky and very blessed that the place I do have an employment at, they didn't get rid of me, but they seen that there was hope in me, just like Jesus sees our hope in each and every one of us. But they didn't make me do anything. I was off work for a couple of days, and that was my first thought of thinking maybe I better do something different in life instead of just run with it like I've been running. And so that kind of slowed me down. I realized about that time, because when I say I was drinking, it was an 18-pack every night, about 3 packs of cigarettes and a can of chew. That was a daily basis of what I was going through. And I had a perfect job, I had a perfect wife, and had a perfect son. But it was just not enough. And I got way ahead of my notes. Way ahead of my notes. But anyway, there was a man that I worked with, and he every time I'd get around him, he'd ask me, he said, "Won't you think about going to this men's fish fry with me, or won't you come over, we're having a men's Bible study or something." He was always throwing that little grain out there for me to see, and he was a very good Christian man. I mean, I got stuck working with him a lot. I mean, a lot. And every time I get in that utility truck, it'd be some gospel music singing, and I mean, he'd have it blaring, and all I ever listened to my whole life was KTTS. So I never listened to none of that Christian music or anything. And it was one day that I got caught doing wrong, and I think out of everybody sitting in these seats tonight, there'd probably been somebody here, or some of us, all of us maybe, have done something wrong. And I was kind of in the jam. I was kind of ashamed of some of the stuff I'd been doing to my bride. And, and not at the time that I went to the encounter, I didn't realize she'd already talked to a lawyer. But our marriage, after 17 years, was about ready to come to an end. I mean, this is 17 years of mess that she had put up with. I can honestly say here, I'll take 100% liability for everything I done. She never did do nothing wrong. She was always there to pick up what kind of mess I'd left. And I think there's several people here to vouch for that. There was some of them seen the messes that I was going through, and they'd shake their head at me. And there'd been several people said that they'd pack my clothes and scatter them up and down the highway if that's what she wanted me to. They would help her to get rid of it. And so I had some good friends, but they knew I had a good wife. But the drinking and the running to the bars, the porn, the cheating, the playing cards all hours of the night, that was where it got to at the end. But one day, a man, like I said, thought enough of me that said, would you consider going this men's deal with me? And I said, "Well, what kind of men's deal are you talking about this time?" I had to work with him that day, so we had to find some kind of small talk. And he said, "It's called men's encounter. He said, Eugene, he said, it'll be just men talking about men things. He said, there will not be nobody judge you for what you've done. You ain't going to have no preachers. They're preaching at you. And so I said, well, I thought, I've got the rest of the day to think about it. And I thought, well, I'll just slough it off. But, I said, I'll think about it. And so we talked about it some more. And I hadn't really heard that much about it. And that was kind of odd for me to not hear nothing about it. But something just told me that day that I really needed to go. Because, see, my wife grew up in church her whole life. And as I said, I've never been to a church house in my whole life. I've never been in the church one time in my whole life except to get married. And so at that time, I don't know, I think it was just that I said it was time for something new, maybe just to get away out where maybe give her a break. Just for the weekend, I thought maybe I could just get away and go to this thing so I could say, well, I'd check that box, I'll just go do that. So I told Wayne, I said, I'd go to this event. I said, what was it cost? He told me what it cost. I just paid him the money. And so, we was getting down there about a week before going, and I was getting nervous. Brother wasn't wanting to go, and a buddy of mine been in about the same mess I'd been in, called me and talked to me about it, and I just said, he said, I heard you're going to this thing called Men's Encounter, and I said, yeah, I'm going to go. I said, I don't know, I ain't got no idea what it's about. I said, I'm going to go. I said, I promised I'll go, but I said, I don't want to. And I said, my wife, she's already I think she's kind of celebrating already that I'm going to this thing. I don't know why she's thinking anything about it. And he said, well, I was asked to go. And I said, well, you might as well go. I said, I don't think they can kill us in 2 or 3 days. I said, let's just go to it and see what it's all about. So, we met out there at Marshfield Nazarene Church. And, at that time, I could tell there was something going to happen. You just get that Holy Spirit moves all over you, and you get that funny feeling, and you're just running up down your leg. I knew something was going to happen, but see, I'd never been wrapped up in Jesus. I never had nothing like that, feel like that in my whole life. It's probably the first time my wife ever seen me shed a tear, because I was nervous. Because I knew I was going. When I left Marshfield on April the 12th, 2012, I knew when I come back I was going to be different. Something was going to be different. Either I was going to be better or I was going to be worse. And so we got on the bus and we headed down there, and that old Nazarene bus, it kind of looked like a prison bus to start with. We was headed down I-44, and there's this big old burly man. His neck was big around a 5-gallon bucket. He said, the last time I was on a bus like this, I was on my way to prison. I thought, oh, Lord. I was a nervous wreck. And so anyway, we got down there and we pulled up there at the church down there, and they had that old music just blaring, and that kind of made me, pretty well finicky there. But anyway, we got on our way to Niagara, and me and as closer as we got to Niagara, and man, I tell you what, a ton of things going through my mind. I was just, I knew the Lord wouldn't listen to me, but I was praying in my own way. Won't you just let us have a blowout on this bus, or just turn this bus over and nobody getting hurt? I just want to call my bride to come and get me out of here, And so, but needless to say, and a good thing to say, that I made it to Niagara, Missouri on April 12th of 2012. And on April 14th, I gave my life to the Lord down there at the County. And I was saying that, I had a lot of things. I had a lot of roads that I had to go back up, and I had to redo some things. So when my bride met me down there LFA to pick me up on that Saturday. I went on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. She was always, regardless if she knew I was right or I was wrong, she'd always do what I asked. And that night, that last Thursday night, when she let me off there at the Nazarene Church, I just looked at her and I said, don't forget to bring what I told you to bring when you pick me up. And we had intentions of going to the lake. We had a lake house up there. And I said, you just make sure them coolers are full, because I'm going to prove to you this is nothing that I want. And she was good on her word. When she got there, the coolers were plumb full of the finest. And we left there and we was going up the road, and I pulled in Casey's there, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to get me a soda to drink. And she said, well, I've got everything you asked me to. I said, with tears coming down my eyes, I said, I won't need that no more. Ooh. Now, Jesus. Now, I wish I could say everything was great from there on. But you know, sometimes when you go 17 years and you've made a lot of background roads, you have to go back and do a lot of apologizing. And I think that night, we pulled up there, and there was probably 40 people out there. And, you know, there's all my buddies, there's all my pals. Each and every one of them was running up there just trying to do what Satan wanted to do, have somebody cave in. But you know, but with saying that, I knew at home that I had people I could lean on. At that time, I didn't have Dan Crawford, I didn't have Randy Petty. Not getting anything of your name in the back, but I didn't have people like that I could just turn to. But I knew I had a group of men that said, if you need anything, call me. And the Encounter Ministries, what I found down there was men that really cared about men. And they'd walk through anything with you as long as you can turn your life over to the Lord. There's still yet messes in your life. There always going to be some messes of some kind in your life. I wish I could say there's not no messes in my life since that day, but you know what? It's still alive. But, and I'm going to make this further. I mean, we're going to land this plane pretty fast. But one of the greatest accomplishments I think I've really done is being able to share the ministry with my wife. I didn't know what this kind of life would be like. But to get to come out and try to help change people's heart, help change people's outlook on life. You know, Tony back there, me and her, we're first cousins. We didn't know each other until we were about 14, 15 years old. But you know, that's just life. But that means that we're still first cousins, we're still close, and we're still good people. And even some of the people that didn't like me because of the life that I was living, you know, after they seen what God had done in my life, there were several of them followed me and just wanted to see what this God was all about. Amen. And you know, there's a verse that when I speak, I usually don't try to grab a whole lot, you know, from the Bible while I'm trying to speak, because I get kind of tongue-tied anyway, so that's just me. But, you know, there in Luke 1, 74 and 75, it says, to rescue us to the hands of our enemies. Or what it's saying there is that the Lord comes in to rescue us from the enemy and to enable us to serve him without fear. And that, you know, fear is something that I've always had a lot of, is that fear is something I'm afraid of failing at. But as long as you keep Jesus in your life, you're not going to be a failure to him. Right. As long as you go out and share what he's done in your life, you're not going to be a failure to him. And Anyway, I think I've got a couple of pictures up there of my family. That's my son and his bride and some of my grandkids. There I got a beautiful little family right there. And then me and my wife. And they call us Team Cantrell at Encounter Ministries. And as Jason said, you know, I've got this big deal sometimes. I can look right at you, I can't remember your name, you know. But, you know, it's so nice. We do an I Still Do deal once a year in Branson. We have men's every other month. We have women's every other month. We have big kids camp, you know, just to give you a little insight of what happened down there. You know, 4 years ago we bought that place and we had 700 kids come through the Encounter camp. This year, I think we bumped right at 11,000 kids this year. I mean, that's how much it grew in 4 years. And all we're doing down there, we're trying to create space for people to find Jesus. That's the big deal. And so I want to hand this over, but hey, I just want you to know that if the Lord can help me, if there's anything in your mind tonight that needs to be laid here at these altars, I'm going to let Tony come up here, but I just lay it down at the altar because there's hope in Him.